you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. Chris Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Hey, we're coming here with another podcast. We certainly appreciate you guys tuning in. Be sure to give us a like, subscribe to us. You can see the video version of this on YouTube.com/Chris Voss. Who wouldn't want to see the video version of it? Because I'm so beautiful. Brad Pitt calls me for tips on being incredibly good looking. So you might as well watch it on YouTube. You can also see us. One of the newest syndications we've added is Amazon Music. So if you like Amazon Music, you listen over there. You can listen to the podcast over there. The Chris Voss is over there, which is pretty awesome. You can also go follow me on Goodreads.com. Look for Chris Voss. We've got a new group we're building over there for a book club. We're going to give away books and talk about our authors and interviews and all that sort of good stuff. So go to Goodreads.com. You can also go to the CVPN or Chris Voss Podcast Network, subscribe to all 9 podcasts over there and all that good stuff. We have a most excellent guest, as always, on the show today, Bruce Van Dusen. Bruce has had more than a 4-decade-long career as a successful director of commercials. Whether you wanted to or not, guess what? You've seen his work, tons of it. His memoir about the ins and outs of his career and life is in his new books. We've got it right here, looking at 60 stories about 30 seconds. How I got away with becoming a pretty big commercial director without losing my soul, or maybe just part of it. Published by Simon & Schuster. It just came out on September 15th. Welcome to the show. How are you, Bruce?
Good, thanks, Chris. Thank you for having me here today.
Awesome sauce. 60 stories in about 30 seconds. Give us some plugs on where people can find you on the interwebs.
My website is very simple unless you have my name, brucevandeusen.com. So it's BRUCEVANDUSEN. That's got a link to all the different places where you can buy the book. There's a little bit of story about the book, and it has a contact information about my work as a director in commercials and in features. I have an Instagram account. Apparently, some other person named Bruce Van Dusen got there first, so I have to be Bruce Van Dusen 1, which makes me sound, like I'm going for some leadership position in China, but I'm not. That's where you find it. And then Twitter, nobody else had it, so I'm Bruce Van Dusen.
Well, he's cool because he's on the Insta,
yeah,
where the kids are.
Yeah.
On the Insta too.
He's leading. He's leading.
There you go. So what motivated you to write this wonderful book and tell us all about you and your life?
I think that when you write a behind the scenes book and you sort of are telling stories outside of school, you have to be pretty confident that your career's kind of in its end stage, because otherwise the knives are going to come out and you're going to be over and done with. So it wasn't as if each chapter felt like it was a nail in my coffin, but it was definitely something that I could get into, Chris, because I'd survived, and very few guys survive as long as I have. You can relate to this. Anybody in media can relate to this. And I thought that in a strange way, if I could put these ridiculous stories, somewhat educational, but ridiculous nonetheless, together in such a way and kind of unify them with a little bit of what was going on in my life, it might be interesting for people to read, particularly interesting for people to read who might be interested in going into the film business, because there are just zero texts in that are helpful. The only ones are written by people who've never earned a nickel in it, which summed up my experience in film school. It took me a long time to realize I was listening to people who were unemployed in the film business, but they were giving me advice about how to become employed in the film business. So I thought it would be entertaining. I tried to write it, Chris, for to entertain people for a general reader. And I call it, people say, what is it? And I go, it's Kitchen Confidential, but it's unfolding on film sets. So,
There you go.
and not nearly as much cocaine, but
Hollywood cocaine?
yeah, I don't know how that happened. And in food, come on, no.
Just right there at the food bar that they have with the thing, right? So give us an overview of the book. Imagine the title kind of tells you what it is: 60 stories, about 30 seconds. Kind of sounds like a early love story of a 16-year-old boy, but tell us what the book's about.
It started out as being the kind of thing where I'd go to places, I lived in the suburbs. I raised my family in the suburbs, and I lived around people who had normal jobs, and then somebody would say, hey, what do you do? And I go, I direct commercials. And they go, oh shit, that must be so much fun. And you go, yeah, it's not that much fun. And they go, but doesn't really interesting shit happen all the time? And you go, stuff happens. And so have you ever met? Yeah, I have met that person. Have you? Yeah. But then the stuff that really, I think, resonated and was funny or interesting was the stuff that was weirder. I got my first job, came to New York. My roommate had a master's degree in film. I got a bachelor's degree. Guy's the most boring guy on earth. I mean, just fucking so boring. And he's out looking for work, dropping resumes. He gets a job. He comes home. I got a job. I said, oh, Jesus, how did that happen? Next morning, he goes off to his job. He calls me really early. And I said, what's wrong? He said, do you know how to drive a clutch? I said, yeah, I'm a guy. And he said, I don't. Wow. And I said, well, what does that mean? He says, well, I'm supposed to drive a truck today. So I drove the truck, and I was gainfully employed working on a film, working on a television commercial, which is a business I didn't know existed, Chris, until that morning. And I walked in and saw 70 large men, all men, building a set, moving furniture, lighting it, and making a minute rice commercial. And I thought, oh, okay, let me see how this works. And that sounded ridiculous because it was about the clutch. The first job I got directing a commercial came about because I agreed to go to a meeting with a guy who was a huge electronics retailer. Mm-hmm. And the meeting had been scheduled, but 2 days before he'd been attacked by a gang. So the meeting took place in an ICU at a hospital in New York. He's in full traction, can't speak. His jaw is broken. He's got oxygen tubes. He's completely fucked up. And his ad guy says, Eddie's got a lot to do. Let's get the meeting on the road. And I thought, he has a lot to do. I mean, he's in bed. But in any event, I pitched him my ideas. He could not speak because his jaw was wired shut. But
holy crap.
The grunts were interpreted by his partner, who said, okay, go ahead, make an ad. And I made an ad, and they wrote it up in the Village Voice. And there I was, a commercial director.
There you go. Those are some hell of a stories, man. Life comes at you weird sometimes, huh?
It does. It comes at you weird. And I think one of the things that I did, and maybe a lot of my peers didn't, was I benefited from being, when I try to make myself sound, like the shit, I say, I was a little naive. Basically, I was stupid. I didn't know better. So I would go to any meeting. I'd get on any phone call. I'd do anything because I figured, I'm not doing anything. And it might be an opportunity. I might meet somebody.
Yeah.
Amazingly, 45 years later, I'm still shooting television commercials. And I have all these peers who, dropped off the planet just when the stuff started to happen for them. And they go, yeah, I don't shoot dishwashing detergent. That's not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't do that. I go, well, they're going to pay you Yeah, but I mean, I'm doing, this is really art. I'm trying to do mostly stuff that feels like Rashomon meets Blazing Saddles, and it's kind of in a mashup there. And, you know, if they get me, I'll do the job. But if they don't get me, I'm not going to, I go, okay, great, good, I'll do the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The check still clears, the money, you know, the money still goes to the bill, your people you owe money to, buys food. Seems to work for everybody. You know, I never understood the word mercenary as being like a criticism. I thought that's a practical guy, right? I don't want to do the dishwasher soap. I moved up to paper towels, and we're not going back. It's kind of like when you move from TV to movies, you just don't go back. So I'm sticking with the paper towels.
Yeah, there is that.
So there's a lot of chapters in this book with a lot of interesting chapter titles. And what were some of the stories that you liked out of your book?
Well, I liked the things I liked most were the stories where, I mean, I make fun of certain people, but I also tried to make sure that if you were keeping score, that the person I called an asshole the most was me. Because, you know, I was plodding my way through and I was terribly insecure and, you know, I had a little bit of skill and I got more as it went along, but I tried to make sure that I was, you know, it was equal opportunity name calling. But when you're doing commercials and you're working for people who are writing these things, there's so many times, Chris, where people say things to you that you just cannot fucking believe. I mean, I'm doing a spot for a laxative, and the spot is really simple. It's just a close-up of a woman talking about not being able to move her bowels. And she's a Broadway actress. She's won a Tony Award. I don't know why she took this job. Actually, I do know why. She took it because she was going to make $75,000 in residuals. But we shoot for about an hour, and I think we're done. And I turn, and this copywriter standing next to me, looking really unhappy. And I said, I think we're good here. I think we're done, don't you? He goes, no, we're not done. I said, what do you mean? He goes, she doesn't get it. I go, what? She doesn't get what? He said, peristalsis. Peristalsis is the scientific term for going to the bathroom. And I said, oh, I definitely think she gets peristalsis. He goes, I don't. I said, and I tell you, there's few things in my life that I'm 100% certain of. This woman knows exactly how peristalsis works. Yeah. He goes, somebody's got to explain it to her. And I said, well, that's not going to fucking be me. And he said, well, what are we going to do about it? So I said, I think you're going to have to talk to her.
You're the one.
Yeah.
It's your thing, buddy.
Yeah. So he goes over, you know, and he stands there like he's a therapist, you know, and he's nodding his head. She won't even make eye contact with him. And he holds for about 10 minutes. He comes over and he goes, she gets it now. I'll bet. So you have that. And
that's a hilarious story, dude.
That guy did not, you know, I shot a few more takes and I said, what do you think? He goes, totally gets it now. It's completely different. I said, yeah, totally. But you'd have, you know, the day my first kid was born, we go to the hospital. My wife's in labor. It's early. And the OBGYN says, you're going to have the kid. And I said, when? He said, no, not for a long time, like 7:00 tonight. I said, oh, so I could go shoot a commercial. He goes, well, I don't know. How long does that take? I said, it's going to take me like 4 hours. He said, yeah. I suddenly realized it was Jewish holidays. It was Rosh Hashanah. He said, I'm going to synagogue. I'm going to temple. So I'm leaving the hospital. I'll be back in like 8 hours. I said, somehow my wife, my ex-wife, thought this was all fine. So I go up to shoot a commercial, Chris, for Japanese Airlines. and we've hired a woman who's going to talk in a monologue.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really nervous. I got to get this thing done. And we've been shooting for about 15 minutes, and I'm looking through the camera, and suddenly I look and I notice something's really wrong. Like she looks like she'd had her wisdom teeth removed. And what's happened is that her left ear has popped out. So it's out now at a right angle to her head. Makeup guy runs over to me and he said, I had to glue her ears to her head. I said, what? He said, yeah, her ears stick wide out on each side, so they're glued to her head. I said, well, can you keep them glued to her fucking head? Because this is not going to work. He goes, I'm going to do the best I can.
I'll do the best.
I said, I got to get out of here. And he said, well, the glue's going to hold for like 10 minutes at a time. So I said, just keep gluing those ears shut. Keep gluing those ears shut. So I shoot about 10 minutes, and all the clients are Japanese. There's 20 of them. It looks like taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3. I can't tell if anybody can understand English. I don't know what's going on. I just want to make sure that they don't notice the ears. So I spend 2.5 hours shooting with these ears popping out, and then finally we get a take that everybody likes, and I run over and say, I think we're done. And then I hightail it out of there, get to the hospital. My wife's up in the delivery room. The OB's late, and she goes, "What took you so long?" I said, "You won't even.
You don't want to know
ears. You don't want to hear girls' ears were popping out." So, those are the kinds of things that. It's easy to laugh now, but when you're in the middle of it, or when you're having an adult male, somebody who's probably got a college education, and he comes up to you and says, "I don't think she understands peristalsis." And you feel like you just want to go out to the perspective of the space shuttle and look down on this and say, what the fuck? What happened here? What are you doing?
Yeah, I can identify with that. For about 6 years, one of the companies that we owned, we used to have a nice little cluster of companies before the 2008 recession. And one of the companies we owned was a talent agency, and we did acting and modeling. And we were in Utah at the time, and we would send subs to Touched by an Angel, Everwood, and there was a lot of shooting going on in Utah back then because of the strike that had gone on in California. Yep. And so we, I would go sit on casting things for films and stuff, and it was, but there was always those people in Hollywood that they just can't leave it alone. Okay, let's do this. They've got to be like, we must turn it into art. And, and everyone's trying to carry that gauntlet. So everyone's fighting with each other over it. And you're just like, what?
Yeah. No, it's I think in commercials, one of the reasons that you run into that kind of personality is because people are just inherently embarrassed by what they do. When I started in the late 70s, early 80s, if I was in a social situation, and I said I direct commercials, I would usually cover my mouth for the commercials part. I direct commercials. It was not cool. And then it started to get a little cool because people who were doing music videos started doing commercials, and movie guys did it. It mainly, all those guys started to do it because there was all this money in it. Yeah. But then you'd cringe when you'd get to an event where you'd have to be in a room with like 5 or 6 commercial directors, and it's just, it's like a bunch of douchebags in backwards baseball caps and Australian fireman shoes and sunglasses indoors, and they're doing things like this, and you're going, stop it, what are you doing? And they'd be still saying, and you'd find also many times when I would shoot famous people, actors or athletes or politicians, they'd usually cringe when you'd come into the room because they'd done something like this before. And I knew that they were expecting the guy in the backwards hat and the glasses and saying, what I'm trying here is to take, the emotion of the Civil War, but bring it to this message, and the inclusivity of it will take into and you just glaze the room. And my whole approach was just to come in and say, hi, nice to meet you. This is going to take me about 5 fucking hours, then we'll be home. And do you have anything particular you want to drink? And they'd go, this is a home run. This guy gets it, which is just, we're going to work and get out of here. I didn't think that was a terrible thing to look at it and say, it's a job.
This is why you've had such a long story career is because, you approach this work and you do your job and, you go home pretty much.
I think it helped. I definitely think it helped. It made me a very big favorite with crews. And I think it made me, I had a lot of celebrities that I worked with who wound up requesting that I come back to work with them because, it was just no bullshit. I didn't really think what we were doing. I thought what we were doing was important. There was a lot of money involved, and there were a lot of people who needed to be satisfied, but I just didn't think it was so serious.
Yeah. I have you ever lived in California?
I would, 10-year period, I was there 6 months of the year, but always Southern California.
Yeah. I don't know if New York's the same way, but when I moved to California, I grew up in California. When I moved back for about 3 years, I would go to parties, and some of them were like for AT&T and different companies that we review and stuff on the Chris Voss Show. So they weren't like Hollywood parties, although we went to some Grammy parties and things like that. But it was so insane how you would go there and like everyone's talking about the sets they were on. And, I was on a set today with freaking Meryl Streep and whatever. And they're all just going around just hashing this out as to what they've been doing. And you're like sitting there looking at them going, was that in the extras section? And then they come to me and they go, so what do you do, Chris? And I'm like, I have a podcast and a website and review stuff. And they're just like, tisk. Oh, yeah. You. And sometimes I'd have fun with them and I'd fuck with them and make up stories. Like, I just try and fit in, but I just make up stories to fuck with them. Like, I was just having lunch with, so-and-so, and they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. Me and Steven Spielberg, he optioned a thing with me and I think we're going to do it. I just fuck with them. It's the constant in it, it's not just commercial directors. I mean, it's everybody's like, I've got something in development at Fox. Yeah.
You do? Well, I'm talking to this guy. What, really? Well, I have his email. And it's in New York.
Exactly what it's like.
In New York, there's an expression, you'll be hanging out on a set and people I have love-hate with them, the Teamsters. They're challenging, and they're all over big unionized movie sets. Mm-hmm. You go near a bunch of Teamsters, and, it's the summer and a movie opens, Spider-Man opens, you're at some event, there's 8 Teamsters there, and they start talking, they go, oh, did you see my picture opened? I go, what? Yes, my picture, Spider-Man, it's my picture. Meaning the guy drove, a prop truck on it for 16 weeks. Yeah, it's my picture. Okay, that's great. People who come in contact with it, there's a story in the book of I'm shooting an ad for a big insurance company, and I needed to get in a hospital. And the only kind of hospitals that allow you in are hospitals that are in really shitty shape, but they need the money. We found this one in the Bronx. I didn't realize the guy who was in charge of dealing with film companies, he now decided he was like a studio executive. So I'm walking around with him. He's this schmo who lives in Great Neck. And he said, what are you looking for? I said, I want to find something that's got a hallway, but maybe a window at the end or something that I can see that there's a skyline out there. He goes, let me show you this. So I go over and I go, hey, that is a great view. He goes, yeah, Marty likes that view. I go, Marty? He goes, Scorsese. He loves that shot. I go, he does? He goes, yeah. Let me show you another shot Marty loves. And we walk to another hallway. He goes, go down here low. And I go, I sort of put my head down. He goes, sit on the ground like Marty does, you know. And I said,
Oh my
okay.
God.
And I said, so I said, you know him? He goes, you know, I did a little Wall Street picture here, you know, and, you know, I did a scene or two. I go, what? What? He goes, yeah, he just thought I had something, you know. So Matt and I and Leo, we had a fun little, I said, get out of here. You're an actor? He goes, not really. You know, just myself, just being myself.
Well, it sounds like you have a real, your feet are on the ground. Like you have a really good circumference in your head of like who you are, where you're at, what you're doing. Like you're not getting lost in the bullshit minutia of it all.
Well, thank you. I think that's inevitably what happens once you get some miles under your feet.
You probably need it too to keep your sanity, because I remember doing stuff with Hollywood and it would just get stupid, like just stupid stuff, and there was all sorts of insanity around it. Like I think one time we had who was it? Sean. He was the stepson of Kurt Russell? No, Kirk. You had
Douglas. One of Kirk Douglas's kids.
We had Sean Douglas come up one time, and we start getting these calls at my agency with this drunk agent, and they're like, "Hey, we're over at the bar. Come on over." I think it was Sean, and so then they're like, "We left our tape at your front door, our reel." And we're like, what the fuck? Why is someone calling me from a bar and they want me to come over? And so we watched the tape, and he's just excoriating every film he's been on, like Iron Eagle 4, and he's doing stand-up, just wrecking his producers and directors. So I called some Hollywood people. I'm like, hey man, what's this dude doing? Like, why is this guy banging on my door? And he's doing jokes about how he's scarred because Michael. All the girls would get to know him and then go to Michael. He later died of a drug overdose, so it was kind of sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, all my friends in Hollywood are like, just run from that dude. But they do, we keep calling us. Like it was just, you know, this is crazy shit. So you got interesting chapters in the book. Tom Waits, which is kind of interesting to me. I don't know what stories behind that. Polishing Turds is the name of a chapter here.
Yeah.
Let's see, Meet the Beatles. What else is on here? This is not brain surgery. What was there anything that surprised you in going back to it? Was there anything that you stuck out at you? Like, do you have a favorite story?
I think what stuck out at me was that there were so many ridiculous incidents, and also that I had probably for the first 10, 15 years, Chris, I really behaved like an asshole. I mean, I was so insecure and conflicted and not sure how a director was supposed to behave, because I didn't have a role model. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have somebody who would just watch me do this and then bitch slap me afterwards and say, could you shut up, they're paying you. So I think one of the things that jumped out at me was that I was able to get through that first 10, 15 years where I really learned how to do it. Mm-hmm. And then by 10, 15 years, that was a point where I learned when to be an asshole. Because in any sort of creative job, you can be the nicest person in the world, but eventually, because you're going to have people around you who are all going to want to throw in their 2 cents, you have to be able to have a personality that eventually just says, no, we're doing it my way. And you're not scared about stepping on some toes. I think it sounds serious, but I think it's a really accessible thing to any viewer. Look, my job, most people flee the end product of my job to go take a leak. Mm-hmm. They don't want to watch it. But I've got a really high bar to get people there. And when you'd have 30 people telling you about how to do something, you'd think, you guys just don't want this to be good, do you? Yeah. You're like, all this money is changing hands, but everything you're doing is working in service of making this shitty. Mm-hmm. And eventually I would say to people, it's kind of like you're the director and they want you to solve the problem, but they've arranged it so that it's like the pilot has to leave the cockpit just as you've left LAX and you're flying to London, and check in with the guy in seat 3F and say, how do you think the flaps are looking on the right wing there? And the guy doesn't have a fucking clue about the flaps, but because he's in a first class seat, the pilot's been told you got to ask him his opinion.
Well, that's a problem of any business. You get too many cooks in the kitchen, and it's just a nightmare. And there has to be somebody who rises up and goes, "Hey, I'm the one, and this is where it goes from here." And there's a reason you're the director, right?
Well, I used to find I had to sit in my fair share, as I'm sure you do, of meetings which are soul killing and exercises in time. But I would always observe people to see if anybody had really interesting transferable expert skills at being able to take somebody's totally shitty attitude, but their power, and completely diffuse it. I'd have to sit with all these people who, were paying me a lot of money, and I'd have to often, nod my head like a trained monkey and say, yeah, I mean, I hear you. That was an expression I really liked. There was one guy I watched. I thought, that's the stupidest expression in the world. And then I thought, no, that's the greatest all-purpose expression I've ever heard. Somebody, and they go, I hear you. What does that mean? What does that fucking mean? I hear you. And they can hear it as being, wow, I'm really being understood, or he gets me. And it could be me saying it, which means my ears hear you. I don't
give a fuck, and you should probably shut the fuck up now, right?
Yeah, but I did hear you.
Oh, that was the other thing I was going to tell you. You mentioned how the producers would walk around with the thing. When I go to the California parties, they would have like a little camera monocle, or I don't know what it is, but it's the camera eye, and they just be walking around going like this through the party. You're just like, are you fucking serious? You're an extra in whatever the thing is. You got some other good chapters in here. This is an entertaining book. How to Be an Asshole. When I Went Blind. Show Me the Money, Marty and Me. I think that was probably the dude in the hallway. And Bronson and Eastwood. That's kind of interesting. Is that a story about actual Bronson? Charles Bronson? It
is. I was hired to do a couple of commercials, public service commercials. And the premise, it was a good premise, was that three Hollywood tough guys would each talk about, birds or little bunnies or something. It was cute. So we did Lou Gossett Jr., we did Charles Bronson, and Clint Eastwood. And the only time that I know that he ever appeared in what would be called a television commercial. So Lou Gossett was fine. And then the next day I have Charles Bronson. I'm about 32 years old. I'm way over my head, Chris. But I think I'm going to get it done. And Charles Bronson gets out of the limo, and I can see steam coming out of his ears.
Oh.
And I introduce myself, and he goes, "What do you do here?" I said, "I'm the director." And he goes, "Somebody better tell this fucking limo guy how to drive around LA." And the limo guy's standing there. He's so uncomfortable looking. He looks like he's eating, street food in Somalia. He's like having huge gut cramps. He's in horrible shape. And Bronson, I said, "Let's get you over into makeup and we'll figure this out." So I got over, and on the way over, he goes, "The script sucks. Do you know that?" I go, "Yeah, I know it's not that good. I know." He goes, "But I'm going to work on it, so it'll get better." I said, "That's great. Go to
you probably get that a lot. Huh?
Yeah. Always the script sucks. So I go back to the limo driver. I said, "What happened?" He says, "That's all total bullshit. The fucking guy made me drive him to a specific Walgreens in the Valley and sent me in to buy mascara for him." I said, "He did?" He said, "Yeah. And that's why we're late, because I had to go out of my way, and then I had to get on the 101, and it was jammed. I wouldn't go this route." I said, "All right." So we go do the thing with Bronson. He leaves. The limo driver is saying, and you know what? I had to pay my $20. So we give the limo driver $20. Nobody wants Bronson's autograph. He does his job well. The next day I've got Clint Eastwood. I'm terrified. I'm out in the parking lot in the morning with my producer, And I say, this looks a little short here. Where is Clint's trailer? She goes, he doesn't have one. I said, what? She said, yeah, he didn't want one. He said, he just come. I said, well, do we have the same driver as we had yesterday? He said, no driver. He said, he's driving himself. He's bringing his own stuff. I said, you are fucking me. You are fucking me. This is the biggest movie star in the world. He's driving himself? Yeah. Right on cue, Buick station wagon drives in. Clint Eastwood gets out. I go over and I say, Mr. Eastwood, hi, I'm Bruce Van Dusen. He goes, Clint is fine. And I said, oh, okay. I said, I'm just checking, the car and this. He goes, nah, Bruce, I'm very happy. I'm kind of interested. Maybe let's go get a coffee and let's just work.
Wow.
World's nicest guy, walk on the set. He knows two of the guys in my crew. Everybody asks after their kids.
Wow.
Everything nice. And the strangest part was that I'm talking to him, and I think it's a little different. He's Clint Eastwood, but it's a little different. We roll the camera to do the first take, and suddenly his eyes change, his voice goes down an octave, and he starts talking, and I go, oh, this is why he's a movie star. He puts on this persona, and it was great. And at the end of, we do 10 takes. I turned to the agency. I said, I really can't with a straight face ask Clint Eastwood to do this again. It's like, what, better?
Yeah.
And as he leaves, everybody wants an autograph, and he signs an autograph. And as he's driving out in his Buick, Chris, we're in the Pasadena Gardens, 3 tourists recognize him, and just start screaming.
Yeah.
He stops his car, signs an autograph, hi. And I think here was a lesson that I applied on everything that I found, which was whether I was dealing with Clint Eastwood or Michael Schumacher, the greatest Formula One driver, or Andre Agassi, or any of the people who were really the best in their field were also nice.
Really?
The ones who were not quite the best had more of a tendency to be a little bit needy, have a little bit of a tendency to be a diva, have something to prove. My experience. Maybe it was also that, I would swear as soon as I'd meet people. I'd try to tell them, this is just not going to be a fucking big deal. Let's get it done. And I think most people who were used to being in the limelight were happy that maybe for a day it was just going to be work. They knew how to work.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. It's interesting how you made that assertion, and the people that are the nicest, that are the most human, I guess, maybe, were the successful ones, and the people who are always putting on airs kind of maybe had to put on airs because they have to, because I don't know, they need everything they can to buck themselves up, or maybe they're just lost in the whole BS of it all.
Yeah, I think they're probably. Listen, no one's born famous. Yeah. Maybe if you're in a royal family, you're born famous, but nobody's born famous. And, I think particularly in Los Angeles, you would encounter people who had entourages, and they had their people, and you had to go through their people. And it usually meant that there was going to be some bullshit. I mean, Clint Eastwood literally had no people. He showed up by himself.
Yeah.
And was always a good sign. Musicians sometimes would have them. I enjoyed, once I got over the fact that I thought that, somebody who was really well known was going to bite my head off, and figured out a way to deal with them where it reduced the chances of that happening. Those became kind of fun jobs to do, because you'd really enter into weird lives. Famous people lead weird lives. I'm glad I'm not one of them.
Yeah. Did you ever come up with a theme throughout your, like some directors, even in commercials, because a lot of like music guys got into commercials. Did you ever come up with a sort of, like, when we watch your commercials, can we always tell that they're your commercials sort of thing? Like you're the Martin Scorsese of commercials or something?
I was always doing the ones where bodies were in trunks of cars. Now, it's a very good question. Because it's a very good question, because it has to do with a little bit of how you distinguish yourself in that weird business. and get people to look for you. But it can also be a little bit of a curse. In my business, it's pretty much broken down. You have guys who are comedy directors, and then you have people who do beauty commercials. You have people who spend their whole lives taking pictures of hamburgers and pancakes.
Yeah.
And then there are ones who are more storytellers. I saw pretty early on that I wanted to be more of a generalist, Chris. I liked being funny, but I wasn't as good at being funny on film. But I found that I was pretty good at doing these commercials that people like phone companies or insurance companies or networks or airlines would do, where the goal was to get a viewer to cry in 60 seconds. So strangely, with my mouth and my approach to the whole thing, one of the things that I kind of distinguished myself as was a director who would do these commercials where people would kind of choke up watching them. And I thought I found that to be very satisfying work. You're in a state where, the Latter-day Saints made themselves famous for years with these commercials that they were doing. Amazing 60-second commercials about families and friendship and all sorts of things. But then I was doing it, with a slightly ulterior motive where, her husband died, buy that card. So, it was a little bit of cross purposes, but at least I could get them to, have a reaction. Made me feel like I was more of a filmmaker.
There you go. You're having that Oscar moment in 30 seconds.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, that's awesome sauce. Yeah, I love the entertainment that's in your book is just hilarious. I mean, just reading some of the chapters, I fucking hate Steve as a chapter. Shooting in shitholes. You're not my first. Please shut up. I mean, pimps and gimps. Wow, that must be. Dude, where's my car? Yeah, some of the chapters in here, just complete entertainment and fun. And yeah, I mean, just Hollywood is such a crazy place. And so dealing with it and its people and everything else. I mean, there's probably a second book here coming up, isn't there, with all the other stories?
Well, I took plenty out. I took plenty out. I think one of the things that also people will find, maybe they'll find interesting in my book is, many young filmmakers, they want to make a movie. I get it. That's right. So I looked at, when I went into commercials, which was kind of by mistake, I thought, I'm going to have a plan here. So I'm going to do this for about 5 years and I'll really learn how to do it. And then I'll segue into making movies. So I segued into making movies and things look good. Like the first movie I made got into Sundance and Toronto, and I got all these distribution offers. And then the movie came out and it got pretty shitty reviews, and so there was nobody banging on my door to make another movie right away. I was so lucky to be able to go back to commercials. I was still able to have something that I was doing. 20 years later, I made another movie, but I was making it for my own, just to have fun, because at this point I had a big commercial career. I mean, I also learned a lot when I went to Sundance. The first-time directors, they put you in a roommate situation with experienced, famous directors. So I had as a roommate Jonathan Demme before he died. He hadn't directed Philadelphia or Silence of the Lambs yet, but he was great. And then another guy named Paul Bartel. As soon as I got to the condominium, they tried to borrow my car. I was the only one who could afford to rent a car. I'm like, I'm 29. These are 45-year-old directors that I'm trying to kiss the ring. And they're like, can we borrow your car? And like an idiot, I gave them my car. I never had it the whole weekend. I'm going to take a shuttle bus around Park City. People going, didn't you rent a car, man? I said, yeah, I gave it to fucking Jonathan Demme. I haven't seen it since. And good lesson, though, because I thought, if you're a famous director, you must have the wherewithal to buy a house, feed yourself, or, I mean, even if you're renting an apartment, at least you can rent a car.
Yeah, there's a lot of moocherism that goes on in that business.
I remember being at the Westwood Marquee, going down to get my car, and Oliver Stone is there fighting with the garage attendant, who says, you owe $20. He goes, $20? I'm an ambassador to the Asian Film Society. Don't you know who I am? You know, this poor Guatemalan is sitting there going, who is this nut? Just give me my $20 and it's it. Yeah. Jesus, man, it's $20. Shut up.
How much did you make on your last film, Oliver? Yeah, the Sundance parties, I remember going to those because we get invited to those, and we go up, and they were such a star fucker event of people just, you know, whoever the big Hollywood thing was back then. It was Brad, or it was what they call it, Brangelina and
yeah,
different things like that, and everybody's like humping, like, I heard over at the other party, the other house is, you know, you're house hopping all the time.
Yeah.
And me, I just want to get drunk and meet some hot chicks and get laid. That was my whole motive, right?
Yeah.
And so my favorite thing to do to get the bar cleared, because there'd be, you know, everybody be trying to get a drink at the bar, I would find a lookalike, like somebody who looked like anybody, like Diana Ross. Like, that was my favorite if I found somebody who looked like, and they just kind of look like them. But I'd just be waiting in line going, I just want a fucking drink so I can get fucking drunk here. And I'd see somebody, I'm like, oh my God, it's Tom Cruise over there. And like, you know, everybody like run away from the bar, and I sat up to the bar, and they'd be over, some poor bastard be stuck with all these people coming after him. And that was the way I got drinks at Sundance. But it was just such star fuckery.
Yeah, anything to clear a room. And then that was also one of the first environments I was in where I learned that people would not look at you when they would talk to you, because they were looking at the door or, you know, past you to see if something better was going on. And it was really in my year, I had this weird year where the 10 dramatic finalists were, 4 of them were first-time directors. One was John Sayles, one was Jim Jarmusch, one was Adam Brooks, one was Bobby Roth. But then also the Coen brothers had their first film in my year. So we're all competing, and we're going to these dinners together. And people, you know, the kind of conversation would be, do you like Utah? And you go, yeah, you know, and you'd be about 2 sentences into your reply, and they go, do you know the Coen brothers? And you go, what? And then I was talking about Utah. Yeah, that's true. Who's in your picture? And, you know, I saw the Coen brothers, and it's horrible. So, you know, you would just learn quickly.
You should just be like, yeah, man, I have lunch. We have breakfast every morning. Yeah. We get together and shoot the shit. Yeah, in fact, they let me sleep on the couch last night, and we all got drunk.
I held my tongue for most of it, and then I was standing in line at the airport to fly home, and one of the judges, this complete galumph, I'd never heard of him, this self-important journalist, was in front of me in the line and to check in, and turns around, and he said, "You're Bruce." And I said, "Yeah, I said, "We didn't meet." He goes, "Yeah, Peter, didn't like your film." Oh, I'm like, great, you know, great. I mean, I know that because I know it because you voted for the Coen brothers, but really necessary to share that with me. But then I thought, fuck it, I'm going back to yogurt commercials, and they're going to pay me on time, and nobody's going to borrow my rent-a-car. It's going to be great. So.
Do you get the thing where, I don't know if people do this to you, but they do the, hey, I have a script. Do you want a copy? Do you get that?
Yep. That's how I did my second movie. I worked with an actor, and at the end of it, he said, "You want to read a script?" And I was in such a chaotic period in my life. I said, "Yeah, sure. Give me the script." So I read it. It was fine. And he said, "What did you think?" I said, "Oh, it was great. It was great. It was really great." He goes, "Well, would you sign on?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Because then, you know, we're going to raise the money." I figured, great, I don't have to do anything. And then, you know, 2 years later, I'm driving home and my phone rings and he goes, "Yay!" And I thought, what happened? Did you have penis extension surgery? And he said, "No, we raised the money for the film." Oh my God, I have to make a movie. So
I have to make a movie. Kill me, dude. There was one time I was at Sundance, and I think we were at the Chevy house, which is, I think it was a famous house. It's starting to blur with all my old age. And everybody was there because they thought Tom Cruise's ex-wife was there. I forget her name. I'm horrible with names. I'm great with faces. And so I'm there, and I'm wearing like my suit. Back then, I didn't weigh as much as I did then. I was much better looking. And these two actors come up to me, and they go, "You're that director." And I go, "No, I'm just Chris Voss." And they go, "No, you are. You're that Hollywood director." And I'm like, I don't even know what Hollywood director. Like, they told me, it just went. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I give them my business card. I'm like, "Look, man, I just run an agency. I just," and like, "No, you're just trying. You just don't want to be seen. We got you, man. We got you." And they're like, do you want our scripts?" Our little. Oh, I know, man. I'm really, and like Lily, I was like trying to get away from him, just moving around the house, trying to get away from him, just get drunk and see how I can get laid with by somebody. And they keep following me, and they start telling people, they go, "He's that director guy," and it's just the leg humping of that industry is just it's just so interesting. But that's what's going to make your book so fun to read, I think, for readers. Anything more we should know about your book, Bruce?
No, you've given me a great opportunity to chat and be funny and laugh with you about it. Just go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or your independent bookstore. I love independent bookstores. Keep them alive. And buy the book. And I'm really, really dependent on, like all authors today, if you read it and you like it, write a review. If you don't like it, keep it to yourself. Just fuck you.
Don't. If you see him at Sundance, don't go up to him and go, "I gave it 3 stars." But no, this sounds like a really fun book. And you can also see him on BruceVanDusen.com. You can see all of some of his work there, his playlists, his films, his reel, as they like to call it.
That's right. Very good.
And all that good stuff. Check it out, guys. 60 stories about 30 seconds. How I got away with becoming a pretty big commercial director without losing my soul, or maybe just part of it. I read that backwards off the screen. That's
very impressive.
There you go. Anyway, guys, thanks to Bruce for being with us. Thanks for sharing all this stuff. It's been fun, bud.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. And thanks to my audience for tuning in. Be sure to check out Bruce's book. You can go to amazon.com. You can also go to amazon.com/shop/Chris Voss. See all the books of all the wonderful authors that have been on the show, and hit that buy button. And of course, as Bruce said, give them some wonderful reviews and all that good stuff. 5 stars. 5 stars are always good to give people. I mean, it takes a lot of work to write these damn books. They deserve 5 stars. It takes a lot of time. I'm trying to write one right now. Anyway, guys, go to the CVPN, go to youtube.com/Chris Voss, hit that bell notification. Follow me on goodreads.com. Just look for Chris Voss over there. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys again. Be safe, wear your masks, register to vote. We'll see you next time.